There is a question I wish somebody had asked me years ago, and that is not what are you paying attention to, but what is your attention costing you? Because attention is one of the most valuable things we possess. Once a moment has your attention, it has a piece of your life. You'll never get that moment back. I've spent years observing people, not to judge them, simply to understand them. And one thing keeps appearing. The people who seem the most exhausted are rarely carrying the heaviest workload. They're carrying the heaviest minds. Constant comparison, constant prediction, constant worrying, constant checking, constant proving. Their bodies are still sitting in one place while their minds are trying to live in 20 different futures. Perhaps that's why peace feels so rare. Not because peace is difficult to find, but attention has become so easy to steal. The world competes for it. Advertisements compete for it. News competes for it. Social media competes for it. Ironic. I mean, this is ironic, right? Opinions compete for it. Even our own thoughts compete for it. Every day, something is asking, look at me. Very little asks, look within. I realise something. Obsession always narrows your world. Observation expands it. When you're obsessed, you stop seeing. You only see the object of your attention. The investment, the relationship, the argument, the problem, the goal. Everything else quietly disappears. Observation is different. Observation notices the whole landscape. Imagine standing on the top of a mountain. An obsessed mind searches desperately for one particular tree. The observing mind takes in the entire horizon. Neither tree nor horizon is wrong, but one creates tension, the other creates perspective. There was a time when I believed that if I just thought about something long enough, I'd solve it. And sometimes that's true. But I've also discovered that many answers arrive only after we stop chasing them. Have you ever noticed how often clarity arrives while you're walking, showering, driving, or simply sitting quietly with a coffee in my favourite daddy mug? Not because you were trying harder, because you finally stopped. Observation has a patience that obsession can never understand. Obsession demands immediate answers. Observation trusts that understanding has its own timing. Obsession forces, observation notices. Obsession grips, observation allows. Obsession asks, when will this happen? Observation quietly wonders, what is already happening that I failed to notice? One of my favourite observations came to me years ago. At a time I thought it only applied to investing. Now I think it applies to life itself. The market rewards patience, consistency, calm over chaos, observation over obsession. When I first understood those words, I believed they belonged to charts. Now I realise they belong to relationships. To parenting. To friendships. To healing. To business. To becoming. And you know what? Life itself responds differently when we stop forcing it and start paying attention. I've often wondered why sunsets affect us the way they do. Nobody rushes a sunset. Nobody tries to make it happen faster. Nobody shouts at the horizon because the colours haven't arrived yet. We simply stand there, watching, receiving, present. Perhaps the sunset isn't teaching us about nature. Perhaps it's teaching us how to pay attention. The older I become, the more convinced I am that the quality of your life is determined less by what happens to you and more by what you continually notice. One person would notice inconvenience, another notices gratitude. One notices scarcity, another notices possibility. The world hasn't changed. Attention has. There was a moment not long ago when I found myself looking at something I once believed would bring me happiness. And for a second, I smiled. Not because I no longer appreciated it, I did. But because something outside the window had quietly become more beautiful. It wasn't the object that had changed. It was me. Maybe that's what seeing clearly really means. Not rejecting the world, not pretending possessions don't matter, not abandoning ambition. Simply no longer measuring your life by the things that can never truly measure you. So today, I'd like to leave you with one final observation before we arrive at the last chapter. tomorrow morning, before you reach for your phone, before you begin planning, before you begin solving, before you begin chasing, just spend 60 seconds looking, really looking at the sky, at the trees, at the light, at the people you love. God, you know what? Even at your own breathing, you may discover that life has been quietly happening while you've been busy trying to improve it. Because the observer never needed life to become extraordinary. The observer simply learned to notice that it already was. Next time, next time's our last time, our journey comes to an end. Or perhaps it begins. Because after everything we've explored, the chase, the need, the patterns, the fear, the letting go, there remains one final discovery. You were never becoming someone else. You were simply finding your way back to the person you had been before the world convinced you that you needed to be anyone different.